Does that noise mean it's ready?
Yeah.
Then you'll beep.
It's as soon as the thing clicks,
Okay.
it'll be good.
I want one of those.
They're nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they're about $15.
Oh my gosh, we need one.
Yeah.
So Harry's gonna tell you, cheap ass husband.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go to Walmart and get you one.
Okay, that's much better. I'm no longer having, oh, does he have a zit on his nose?
You're partly to blame
I know.
because you married a tightwad.
I did.
You did.
Yeah.
This is your fault.
Anyway, Princess they brought her airfare with them. I don't always like the cruise on airlines. Flying in there, it's like so you can't get like a good round trip thing or something. So it's worth it then, or at least it should be. And we have gone back and forth, and then
Okay, I just went live, so watch your language.
okay, yeah, I won't
I'll do
talk
one of
about
these.
calling Princess. We're flying from here to Dallas and Dallas.
No, the story she's telling is this.
Yeah. It's mine, but it's
Yeah.
silver. It's
Flying
silver.
at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
To Dallas.
He's
Catch
got
a
one
flight
step up.
at 2:30 from Dallas to Rome.
I just got it today.
They changed it to 11 o'clock. in Dallas. It's an hour and 3 minutes.
He starts on the
Domestic
21st.
terminal
Okay,
and
so-
international.
Yeah, he got a call yesterday morning.
They're-
If you were 22 years old by yourself, you made it. With a backpack.
Like, do it.
They're starting
More entertaining part about the winter volleyball schools.
Was your response?
I needed to
Been
visit,
to Dallas.
and a buddy of mine
It's
was like,
massive.
I've always enjoyed playing volleyball. I played sand a couple times, and
He's not.
it's good because it keeps me in my keeps me athletically
Because he
competitive.
was overqualified.
But some of the kids in there aren't at that level. I'm like, I don't know about you guys, but I had six. I don't know, my brother was 2 older cousins, and I was the youngest. So that means I had to fight my way up.
And you know what? That's a good opportunity. Lost baggage. Get the bags, guys, gotta get your stuff.
No, I'm good.
Just they're there.
And
After a while, I'm like,
I kind of have my,
Clean socks. I'm not asking for a lot. Clean socks.
So you having fun on that so far?
Oh,
I actually carry.
But every day, I have the class. I have to tell myself, all right, I'm not gonna go too crazy. I'm not gonna walk out there dripping in sweat. But then someone will score on me, and I'm like, oh, all right, it's on now, it's on. And then I end up leaving dripping in sweat because I'm diving across the plane.
Don't worry about it. We're not
I always
started
started
yet,
okay?
okay?
But when it's
Don't start
athletics,
till
like
6:30.
anything physical, me and my buddies are playing cards and I lose.
Whatever, yeah.
But if it's, hey, I mean, I can throw that rock farther
You know
than
you can do it better,
I
yeah.
will throw out my bag to get that rock farther than you can. Okay, that's just.
It's hiding under there.
you know.
David's in law.
Oh, okay.
Hey, those are clear. I like those.
They didn't know that.
He messaged me on
Facebook.
Oh, interesting. Well, you guys are just lucky.
I know, or maybe they'll get it next week.
Well, or they may move you around.
Who knows?
Oh.
Things that, like you can see last night or,
Bad news, the link worked. We have people coming online.
We have people coming in.
Oh, man.
We have people
I know,
coming
what a
in.
bummer.
Most people and all their questions.
That's okay.
Yeah, well, actually, no, I mean, your father kind of has a monopoly on that.
That was nice. Suzanne.
Yeah.
She did.
Give you all the information you need.
Is there a full
Like,
room or
okay,
something?
great. What's your
Oh,
number?
it's the dream comment.
I saw it last night. Because they're using something or other.
They want to sell it.
right
in
there.
other places.
So
like
we all
in
look
China.
kind of very much
But
no,
Yeah.
Oh,
no,
he would have like a long.
well, that's what I told her.
I forgot.
Oh,
I didn't know. Yeah.
Okay, now I look like
Even for him. You just.
well, wait a minute. I thought the red plate
Because
was
he has to have a
yours.
facility. He's gotta meet.
We're gonna get our own.
Yeah,
You can't
really.
just-
For you, everybody else shares.
You can't just do it in your.
You know, the map really looks strange.
No,
Because
no.
it's tilted.
Okay.
Not so busy, it's gotta be.
Oh, that's really good. Yeah, Egypt might be government larger.
My phone.
Well, I called and
Yeah.
well.
But I didn't get that far. to tell
Their
him.
towel's right there, man.
Yeah.
Dish towel.
Do that.
Yeah. Whatever.
It is always good to know who is really coming.
I need glasses. That's
At
what I
one point, we
need.
thought.
And my dad gets on
Three
me.
more people.
Give me more.
Bill and Paul.
Fiscally wise,
She said
by-
they are.
by his-
Last
or no.
summer.
His definitions.
What are you using two paper towels for?
You can do the same job with just one. No, much paper towels
Well,
cost.
the thing is, you know, you could.
Okay, all right.
We could be cozy.
Diana,
Yes.
Kathy says hi. She's joining us.
We are officially done with Axton's Bible project.
The game?
The game is officially done.
We need to have a game night.
We'll have a game night. I'll bring it in.
Okay.
Once I get it back from the school, I'll bring it in. It's really cute.
Oh,
He made a Bibleopoly. He did Old Testament version.
Okay.
And today after school they had the faith fair instead of the science fair. They had a faith fair, so we all got to go around and see everybody's projects. And one of the 6th or 7th grade teachers said, "This one is the best. If we were grading these," and Axton thought that was really cool. So.
I showed my daughter a picture of him because her school, her kids' school is doing the 100-day thing.
Oh,
And
yeah, so you get to
Oh,
see the old man.
So Gideon is 7, and I was like, well, Axton had the
Well,
best.
Harry.
Mm-hmm.
She's
He
hoping
had
that
so
to
much
make
fun.
this Bible monopoly. She's asking me questions. I say, hey, why
Yeah.
don't you email this guy? He knows a lot more than I do.
Well, you would be surprised how
You did
much
pretty good, Ethan.
how much you have learned
Yes,
in
you
what
did
the past
pretty good.
4 years.
Yeah, maybe we should
You
have
know.
a Bible trivia.
Trivia, we
Yeah, you come here enough times.
Yeah.
It's a big something
You
though.
could be in
Yeah.
charge of it. Yeah, that would be fun.
I have a
I would so lose.
Yeah, I think I have one.
Yeah.
But usually, well, they also ask the question in a weird way, and so sometimes even though you know too much. When I'm
Oh, yeah.
trivia things, so.
Where are we at?
43.
We're at 43?
Jim says 43.
Why am I at 46? Way
At
ahead of you
42.
guys.
Way ahead of you
Reading ahead there.
I do that sometimes
There's
though.
no extra credit.
I know.
Harry, thanks for the emails on the tape.
You're welcome. Well, it's really difficult. I have to hit forward.
Do they do that like every day?
Oh yeah.
They send out the communication every day?
Yes.
Okay.
That's all
I feel like
That's a lot.
Well, every day okay. Steve Collins is constantly in the fundraiser mode for
Okay.
this dig.
Okay.
So it's going out to the people who have sent. He's collected over $500,000 to make this dig possible.
Wow.
How much?
Over $500,000.
Yeah.
And they're 17,000 short right now. So he is still in the, mode of let's see if someone else will kick in some money.
Yeah.
And the hard thing is this is the last year of the dig. So the next 10 years conceivably could be people taking little bits of junk, writing a master's thesis or a dissertation on it so that it can be published. And he's still got to get enough money to support keeping the little trinkets where you can get to them.
Right.
I mean, rent is not free. Electricity is not free. Okay, we are hitting at 6:30. Welcome, guys. And we have
Yeah. It was all.
continue to chew. It's okay. Yeah. Okay, online we've got Van and Suzanne. They were here last week. Jim is online. Kathy's here. Patsy is here. Laura Lang is out there. And we've got 11 people around the table. So I think we pretty much have a quorum to begin. As soon as we get everybody with their coffee, we will get started. We're going to be starting in Genesis 43. We're in the middle of Joseph's story with his brothers coming to Egypt to get grain.
And the snacks look fantastic. Thank you so much.
Snacks are always fantastic. You know.
That's fantastic to me.
Oh, yeah. It's better than the gumballs ever. What are you doing? Real fine, Scott. Glad you could make it. Just okay. If there's delays in traffic or whatever, the chair. If I know you're coming, there'll be chairs. If I don't know you're coming, there won't be. And I've only got 5 extra chairs out there, so this is not a great imposition. You know. Okay, if everybody's got their coffee, water, snacks, whatever, we'll get started. No sweat. Well, that's Maria. I mean, she has to have her. She doesn't get her hug. It just doesn't work.
It's not the same.
Yeah. Notice the guys are migrating to this end of the Okay, let's go to the Lord. Father, thank you for the life of Joseph. Thank you for the dysfunctional families to encourage us and show us where I wasn't that bad. Lord, grant us your peace. Help us to learn from studying your word in your name. Amen. Amen. Okay, this is review. Last week, we had the first visit of the 10 brothers. Benjamin's left back with Dad, somewhere up around Hebron, Beersheba area. They're accused of being spies, and Joseph's half-brother Simeon is held in jail. We do not know what prison. I have great conjectures and can be snarky about it, but we don't know where he was held. But we know he was held until they ran out of food. About 60 to 70 days worth of grain had been picked up by the 10 brothers, 10 donkey loads, 400 pounds to the donkey. So when they ran out of food, they finally began discussing the idea of, well, we need to go back. And the brothers are adamant, if we don't send Benjamin with us, we can't get the food. Okay? Judah goes, Judah is beginning to step into a great leadership role here, going, Dad, his life or mine, if God forbid something happens to him, my life is forfeit. Reuben was kind enough to offer his own sons, but not himself. But Dad goes, okay, take him, take double money, and he's ready to go because they ran out of food. Fathers, just a hint here. I've told my kids I will not bail them out of jail the night they get arrested. But that was part of their 18 years old, have a cigar on the back porch with Dad discussion. And the other thing here is that he's waited until it's too late to have enough food for them to go and come back. Judah says, we could have been there back twice in the time we've been sitting here talking about this. So let's just do it, Dad. What Jacob thought was going to happen in that 2 months, I'm not real clear on. But he's left one son in prison, so he doesn't have to send Benjamin. That's where we are in the story. Scott, if you would pick up at chapter 43, verse 11 to 15. Now they're figuring out what they're going to do to go to Egypt.
Then their father Israel said to them, if it must be so, then do this. Put some of the best products of the land in your pack and take them down to the man as a gift. A little balsam and a little honey aromatic gum and resin, pistachios and almonds. Take twice as much silver with you. Return the silver that was returned to you in the top of your bags. Perhaps it was a mistake. Take your brother also and go back at once to the man. May God Almighty cause the man to be merciful to you so that he will release your other brother Benjamin to you. As for me, I am deprived of my sons, then I am deprived. The men took the gift, double the
Okay.
amount.
Okay, you can stop there. Okay. The God Almighty here is El Shaddai. It's one of the names of God. It can also mean God the Thunderer. No, it's not Thor. Okay, I saw that flash in your eyes. Oh, maybe he's a Scotsman. So Jacob's going, okay, take some of the things of the land. What he's describing is the trade goods that would come up through the Midianites going up either to the coast of the Mediterranean or across the Sinai to Egypt as trade goods. A little myrrh, a little balsam. These are aromatics that come from all the way down in Yemen. Spices. So he's collecting things that are very expensive trade goods as a gift. Another word for it is bribe. This is how trade was done. You gave a gift to the guy you're going to be trading with, then you get down to doing the deal. When he sends stuff to your land as a merchant, you would receive a gift of similar value from him. That's how you kept good trade relations going. So he's just following good business practice here. He says, take double money, give back what was in the mouth. Maybe they just screwed up. Nobody here thinks that, but Jacob's going, hey, why else would they send the money back? Plus what we bought. So let's just send extra. And if my sons are gone, my sons are gone. I will mourn. He very fatalistic attitude is going, I've got to save the clan. We got to have food. Take what we got, even the pistachio nuts. And hey, they don't grow in Egypt. Trees are something you don't see in Egypt even today. You see palm trees. You can see a little bit of papyrus forest. You don't see great oak trees. You don't see fruit trees. Those can grow up in the southern Levant, going up through Syria. Olive trees grow in Levant. They don't grow in Egypt. So there are a lot of constraints on agriculture that he's playing to. Let's send him things he wouldn't have access to otherwise as a good gift. He's given the best he's got. And he's going to El Jefe, the man. Okay. Maria, are you ready?
Okay.
16 to 25.
When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of his house, bring the men into the house and slaughter an animal and make ready, for the men are to dine with me at noon. The man did as Joseph told him and brought the men to Joseph's house. And the men were afraid because they were brought to Joseph's house. And they said, It is because of the money which was replaced in our sacks the first time that we are brought in, so that he may assault us and fall upon us to make us servants and seize our donkeys. So they went up to the steward of Joseph's house and spoke with him at the door of the house and said, O my lord, we came down the first time to buy food, and when we came to the lodging place, we opened our sacks, and there was each man's money in the mouth of his sack, our money in full weight. So we have brought it again with us, and we have brought other money down with us to buy food. We do not know who put our money in our sacks. He replied, Peace to you, do not be afraid. Your God and the God of your father has put treasure in your sacks for you. I received your money. Then he brought Simeon out to them, And when the man had brought the men into Joseph's house and given them water, and they had washed their feet, and he had given their donkeys fodder, they prepared the present for Joseph's coming at noon, for they heard that they should eat bread there.
Okay, this is a pretty lengthy passage. Does somebody want to try and take it apart slowly? No takers. Oh, good. Okay.
So they show up to Joseph's house. His steward or his butler or foreman, whatever you want to name him, his head guy who maintains the house, especially since Joseph probably travels so much and has been the last 7 years. They just kind of explain to him, but they're surprised by being allowed to come into the home. When they're in there, they don't hesitate to say, hey, by the way, when we left last time, the money that we paid was already in our sacks. We didn't do it. We brought it back with us. We also brought more money to buy more. We wanted to just clear the air here so that nothing is assumed. And but they're treated, the first time that towards the end of when he was reading when they said when he had water to wash their feet, the first thing I thought of is that's a big thing in this culture, that they're being treated as true guests, not just some hillbillies from the middle of nowhere showing up to exchange grain and leave again. They're being treated like a true house guest. And then Simeon appears, so they know he's not dead or hasn't been executed.
Yeah.
So little by little, as these things are unfolding in front of them, they're probably becoming more and more at ease. Like we're being shown true hospitality here.
Yes, they are. They're still second-class citizens. They're Asiatics. We, in our society, we're very quick to go, oh, that's racist. For the Egyptians, yeah, we're Egyptians and everybody else is a barbarian. Thank you. That's the same attitude the Greeks had.
And the Romans.
Yeah. They consider Greeks civilized, though. But
Yeah,
anybody
they stole
else
most of
was a
their-
barbarian.
They stole most of their culture from the Greeks. So.
Well, yes. Appropriation. Yeah, cultural appropriation by grand theft, but the Roman way. But spot on, Chris. Good job. They're saying, okay, we got to clear this up immediately. We didn't steal the money. It was right here. We have it in the original bags, with a little seal on it. See, we brought it all back. We have more money. And you're right. They're being shown hospitality. Asiatics did not eat with Egyptians. Take that from. You'll get that in scripture in a couple of verses. Joseph will still eat separately from them. So I'm kind of preparing you for what we're going to read next, because they're invited to dinner at his home. This is not a business deal. This is hospitality. This is Shemite hospitality. This is nomad hospitality. The Egyptians did things in a grand style. They would allow you to, come into their audience hall, but not into their home. So he is offering more intimacy than would have been normal in just a business deal. Mm-hmm. He didn't do this the first time. They had a meal, but it was not in his home. So that was, So I'm trying to draw the nuances here of how different he's treating these people than he would treat anyone else who came out of the Sinai. His steward, and in the Hebrew it is Elohim Elahab, which is the gods. Same word from Genesis 1:26, let us. Elohim, God came down and said, let us. Elohim. So he's using exactly the right term for the God of Jacob. Right. No, I'm not suggesting that this Egyptian doesn't go and offer sacrifice to Seth along with the Pharaoh or anybody else. But he is, as the steward, doing what his master does. So his master serves Elohim, Yahweh, El Shaddai. And as a good steward, he believes, I'll believe. Okay, I wouldn't. there are commentaries that make a huge deal out of this. That's why I'm making a point here that that's all you got. It doesn't say that he was a follower of Yahweh and he would become a Hebrew. The only Hebrews are going to all have lunch together. Okay? And they're not even Hebrews yet. But as you said, he's making them feel at home. Simeon comes out and he hasn't been beaten totally badly. He's alive. You know, things are good. And so they're starting to relax. Going, hey, maybe this is going to work out. Maybe we'll get all 11 of us will go home. Now we have the questions from Joseph, still through an interpreter. He's not speaking directly to them yet. How about 26 through 34, if you would, Janelle?
Okay. When Joseph came home, they presented to him the gifts they had brought into the house, and they bowed down before him to the ground. He asked them how they were, and he said, "How is your aged father you told me about? Is he still living?" They replied, "Your servant, our father, is still alive and well," and they bowed low to pay him honor. As he looked about and saw his brother Benjamin, his own mother's son, he asked, "Is this your youngest brother, the one you told me about?" And he said, "God be gracious to you, my son." Deeply moved at the sight of his brother, Joseph hurried out and looked for a place to weep. He went into his private room and wept there. After he had washed his face, he came out and, controlling himself, said, "Serve the food." They served him by himself, the brothers by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with them by themselves, because Egyptians could not eat with Hebrews, for that is detestable to Egyptians. The men had been seated before him in the order of their ages, from the firstborn to the youngest, and they looked at each other in astonishment. When portions were served to them from Joseph's table, Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as anyone else's. So they feasted and drank freely with him.
Okay. Joseph is setting this all up. Laura asked a speculative question, is Joseph's motivation behind this to just see Benjamin? Absolutely. He wants to make sure his brothers haven't killed his brother.
Right.
Well, one in a cistern, 2 in a cistern, But when he sees him, he can greet him, but he's got to withdraw and get control of himself again, because he is still testing his brothers. He's still trying to make sure, are these guys for real, or are they the guys that sold me into slavery? And what can I do to protect my brother no matter what? It's I and my brother against my half brother and my cousin and my nephew, So, and he has them seated. His steward has been told, I want them seated this way. Yes, boss. And they're seated in birth order. The odds of that are somewhat over 100,000 to 1. If you've got 11 people to sit, or 10 people to sit down and just randomly, the eldest will be there, and then the second, and, the laws of probability say it ain't going to happen. It's like buying a lottery ticket. You can buy as many as you want. It does not improve your chance of winning. But so he has them seated, and then Benjamin gets 5 times the food of anybody else. That should have gone to the older, if you know who the older were, for them to share so that they could have hospitality and share. I'm Moatashadas here. I can give to my brothers. I have extra. That's normally what you do. But here he has them seated. That one gets more, and he's seated separately with the Egyptians in his household. So there's a complete separation here that in our culture we'd go, huh? But in this culture is absolutely normal. They're being treated as guests to the extent that Asiatics could be treated as guests by Egyptians. This is as good as any Hebrew is going to be treated ever by the Egyptians.
Now, can we call them Hebrews yet?
Well, they're the sons of Israel. You could call them. Their Israelites would be more proper term.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because post Moses would be when they would be deemed Hebrews.
Yeah, that's part of why, when we finish this, I'm just going to take between now and whenever we cut off in the summer. We have a challenge during the summer because vacations come along and there's a lot of social things. So as we hit the summer, we kind of, okay, we don't have a quorum, we're done. Let's go party. But, But, I'm going to go into Exodus and talk to that issue of when did they become Hebrews?
Okay.
And I'll even give you the date of the Exodus. In fact, I'll give you 3 different dates, 3 different rationales to get to those dates, because there is no real agreement on the date of the Exodus. That'll probably be a 20-minute tirade that you go, oh, just shut up and let us read the Bible.
Left and went across the desert
Yeah.
a long time ago.
Yeah.
I like the Cliff Notes version.
Yeah, well, that's the summary. Okay. Okay, are there questions about what's going on in chapter 43 before we go on?
So I do have a question. Okay,
Sure.
So you said Joseph ate with the Egyptians in a different room, but Joseph really was a Hebrew as well, but he was married to an Egyptian, so that is what gave him the authority, the whatever to eat with the Egyptians.
Okay, as I said earlier, the ruling class are Hyksos. They're actually people from Syria, Phoenicia, Canaanites. Same as Joseph. They look like Joseph, but after you shave all your hair off and put on Egyptian clothes, you're treated as an Egyptian. He's got a gold chain. That makes he's in the club.
He also
But-
has authority over people who work in Egypt.
Oh, yeah.
So he's
Yeah.
a CEO boss man. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
he gets to sit at the executive table.
Yeah.
So we figure that the brothers got to be blown away.
Oh,
I
yeah.
was like, this is the weirdest thing ever happened to me.
Oh, it is. Yeah. They're eating better food than they probably have in their entire lives. There is no good restaurant. There isn't a Sadie's to go to there.
And to go back with Chris's point, where they started to offer hospitality and they're getting a little more relaxed and all of that. And by the end, they're eating and drinking and having a party.
Yep. Okay. Free beer. And the Egyptians did drink beer. You don't drink the Nile River. Bad things happen if you drink the Nile River. So even when they were building the pyramids, one guy was detailed out of each work gang to make beer for the 10th day when they got a break.
Now that'd be the job.
Well, it kind of,
else is
it kind of rotated around. I think the guy who had his foot crushed probably had the inside track on it from that work chain.
So if I was in ancient Egypt slaving away, I'd want to be the rat smasher
Yeah, that's not a bad
or the
job.
beer brewer.
Yeah. Those,
Your foot smashed.
yeah, rat, not foot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a job that has to be done. I think hiring cats is cheaper. All right. They're having a great party. And Diana, now things go sideways. Chapter 44, verses 1 through 5, please.
Now Joseph gave these instructions to the steward of his house. Fill the men's sack with as much food as they can carry, and put each man's silver in the mouth of his sack. Then put my cup, the silver one, in the mouth of the youngest one's sack, along with the silver for his grain. And he did as Joseph said. As morning dawned, the men were sent on their way with their donkeys. They had not gone far from the city when Joseph said to his steward, "Go after those men at once, and when you catch up with them, say to them, 'Why have you repaid good with evil? Isn't this the cup my master drinks from and also uses for divination? This is a wicked thing you have done.'"
Okay. Any thoughts about what Joseph's doing here?
Well,
he
Okay.
he tells them to put his stuff in with their sacks, so that basically framing them kind of as a test, who's gonna be honest,
well, I think
even though they did, like who's gonna stand up and take the blame for it, even though I set them up.
Oh yeah.
it's kind of interesting. It's an opportunity for Benjamin to come back by himself, and he can spend time with him without giving up who he really is. But also, secondly, I wonder if any other brothers will stand up for the youngest Benjamin. Do they treat him like they treated me, like an outcast or the black sheep of the family?
Yep.
And is he only alive because my father protected him all these years? Let's see if somebody shows their true colors.
Yeah. And if they go home, worst case, Benjamin's safe.
Right.
Benjamin comes out safe in this no matter what.
And I think it would bait Jacob to or Israel at this point to come back. So really, it's a win-win. That's a smart move. That's a really interesting.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting play.
Yeah, we don't really think of how clever Joseph is. I mean, any outcome of this, he gets information about his brothers. Who's a good guy, who's a bad guy. Last time, all of them took off and left Simeon. Will they do that with Benjamin? They've done it once. Will they do it twice? Worst case, I'm not sending Benjamin back with them. I'm protecting my brother's life. He gets a lot of information out of this. Anybody disturbed by the divination cup?
Yeah, very much so.
Why? He's not violating the law of Moses. It hasn't been written yet. Hasn't been given yet.
I mean, you see little tidbits of like a parallel to the Last Supper here. Like
Oh, yeah.
it's not laid out that way,
Uh-huh.
but you see them just like 12 disciples. You see the 11 brothers, and he being the 12th, make 12. So you have 12 sitting there. There's talk of a cup being passed around and being used or being allocated. Interesting.
Yeah.
Little tidbits.
That he drinks from and does divination, does prophecy, reads the future. Yeah. You look at it, and in from our perspective, looking, this side of the cross, looking back, we go, what are they doing? That's occult. In Egypt, the occult was normal.
Yeah.
And in Canaan, the occult is normal. The weird thing is they're only worshiping one God. Monotheism is very strange because there are just so many forces of nature out here, and each one of them has to have a deity behind them. So, a pantheon is normal. This monotheism is weird. But the steward of the house bought into it, So, okay. But he is a dreamer, the seer of mysteries. That's his name. I mean, that's his new name. How would you like to be remembered? Oh, great seer of mysteries. I got a question for you. And I'm sure that happened to him regularly from other officials. The butler and the baker and the butler, really the cupbearer, they both took advantage. They had dreams. There was no interpreter, so he interpreted. That's divination in the definition of the Egyptians. So, is God still talking to him? I think so. Is he using a magic cup? That's what they expect to see. And there's occasions when it's good to give your audience what they want. I'm just, like I said, Joseph is living in a very pagan world, and he's being true to God. But he has a cup that he does divination. I'm not going to judge him on it, but it is a little, that's not our understanding of God.
You look at the weaving of old and new and prophecy and stuff, and you say, okay, well, just with quick reflection, how many times is the word cup used in the Bible? Well, it's used here. It's used in the Last Supper. It's used with Jesus and speaking of Elijah, the cup of Elijah. It's used in Revelation. So, like, it may not be used 4 or 5 times, but each one of those times is pretty heavy, like heavy-duty lay on it.
The Garden of Gethsemane. Let this cup pass from me. Yeah, it's
That's all judgment too.
yeah. You don't
Mhm.
see cups.
Pouring out.
Yeah, cups don't show up until this point in Genesis. Think about that. And the parallels between Joseph's life and Jesus' life, they are not the same person, as he is not a living theophany. You know, let me make sure of that. But there are parallels there that you can build sermons on without even thinking. But divination is in this. Prophecy is in this. The ability to see the future, be a seer. I mean, Samuel, a Shema was his name, was a seer. Saul went to him initially to try and find his donkey. And they brought a little wedge of silver as a gift. So, being a seer is not being a cult in this period of time, even within the Israelites. Okay. Long way around, but I want to make sure you understand our spiritual understanding is very different than theirs in this time period.
So one thing I thought was really interesting was, in going back to the brothers and how they were kind of very much nicer to Benjamin than they were to Joseph. Even when Benjamin was given the 5 times portion, the brothers could have held that against Benjamin and said, okay, bud, you're on your own.
Yeah.
You know, because a lot of people would still be resentful because you have more than I do.
Oh, yeah. But it was dished onto his plate. He didn't do it.
It doesn't matter. He didn't
Yeah.
share either.
Yeah, doesn't say, you know. Oh, that's a really good lamb chop you got there. You know,
I think they all had enough to eat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
they're all
definitely.
eating, drinking. This has been a great trip. We get to go home. Our bags are full. Let's go. And they do. And the steward is sent after him. Show of hands. Does anybody believe the steward took off after him walking? Probably he took a chariot. They didn't, cavalry doesn't exist. They don't have stirrups in this period of time. You can ride a horse bareback, you can ride a donkey bareback, or you can be in a chariot. And if you're an official, you have a chariot. If you are an official and you're going out the gates across the canal going into Sinai, you probably can turn to the military commander and say, I would like to have some soldiers go with me, and you will get other chariots to accompany you because you're representing Joseph. Joseph with a gold chain, we got it. Don't get him irritated. So I don't think that the steward went out alone. I've seen that preached too, which is really funny. Okay, how about 6 through 13 of chapter 44?
When he caught up with them, he repeated these words to them. But they said to him, why does my Lord say such things? Far be it from your servants to do anything like that. We even brought back to you from the land of Canaan the silver we found inside the mouths of our sacks. So why would we steal silver or gold from your master's house? If any of your servants is found to have it, he will die, and the rest of us will become my Lord's slaves. Very well, then, he said, let it be as you say. Whoever is found to have it will become my slave. The rest of you will be free from blame. Each of them quickly lowered his sack to the ground and opened it. Then the steward proceeded to search, beginning with the oldest and ending with the youngest, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. At this they tore their clothes. Then they all loaded their donkeys and returned to the city.
I love the oath. Why would we do this? We're honest men. If anybody's done that, the person that did it should die and we'll all be your slaves. I swear by, and pick your deity. This is not uncommon. Well, we're not guilty of anything. We're honest men. Then he searches. Look at all of them reacted the same way. They tore their garments. That's in mourning. That's in anguish. And by the words of the steward, they are free to go. They go back to the city. They go back to where Joseph is, all of them. Nobody heads back to Jacob. This tells Joseph something.
My footnote says that the declaration of if any of your servants is found to have it, he will die. That years earlier, Jacob had given Laban a similar rash response with
Yep.
Rachel and
Yeah.
the gods.
Yes.
I thought that was interesting.
Rachel's a better con person than.
But she knew they were there.
Yeah, that does give you a slight
Yeah,
advantage.
yeah.
It's easier to hide something if you know it's there.
Yeah.
Think about your kids when they hide something. Okay, 14 through 23, Judah.
Okay, hold on a second. We're at 23. Okay, Joseph was still in the house when Judah and his brothers came in, and they threw themselves to the ground before him. Joseph said to them, "What is this you have done? Don't you know that this man like me can find things out by divination? What can we say to my lord?" Judah replied, "What can we say? How can we prove our innocence? God hasn't covered your servant's guilt. We are now my lord's slaves, we ourselves. The one who was found to have the cup." But Joseph said, "Far be it from me to do such a thing. Only the man who was found to have the cup will become my slave. The rest of you go back to your father in peace." Then Judah went up to him and said, "Please, my lord, let your servant speak a word to my lord. Do not be angry with your servant, though you are equal to Pharaoh himself." My lord asked his servants, "Do you have a father or a brother?" And we answered, "We have an aged father, and there is a young son born to him in his old age. His brother is dead, and he is the only one of his mother's sons left, and his father loves him. Then you said to your servants, 'Bring him down to me so I can see him for myself.' And we said to you, and we said to my lord, 'The boy cannot leave his father. If he leaves him, his father will die.' But you told your servants, 'Unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you will not see my face again.'"
Okay, I probably cut that at the wrong point, but okay.
Do you want me to continue?
Yeah, if you could, okay. Let's see. How about through 26? I have to change that in my notes.
"When we went back to your servant, my father, we told him what my lord had said. Then our father said, 'Go back and buy a little more food.' But we said, 'We cannot go down. Only if our youngest brother is with us will we go. We cannot see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us.'"
Okay, he's saying everything that happened with Jacob. Notice, it isn't Reuben doing this. It's Judah, fourth son of Leah. Judah is beginning to come to the fore in leadership already in the book of Genesis. We'll get more of that when Israel's on his deathbed and prophesies about each one of the tribes and what their character will be. But Judah's very much the leader at this point. And again, he recounts, you have the same power. You're like Pharaoh. He's begging, don't do this. And he's giving all the reasons, we brought Benjamin because you demanded it, and we're doing everything you want. And now we get his pitch. 27 through 34.
Sorry.
Would you like a sip of water?
No. I'm sorry, 27 through what?
27 through 34. It's the end of the chapter.
Your servant my father said to us, "You know that my wife bore me 2 sons. One of them went away from me, and I said, he has surely been torn to pieces, and I have not seen him since. If you take this one from me too, and harm comes to him, you will bring my gray head down to the grave in misery. So now if the boy is not with us when I go back to your servant my father, and if my father, whose life is closely bound up with the boy's life, sees that the boy isn't there, he will die. Your servants will bring the gray head of our father down to the grave in sorrow. Your servant guaranteed the boy's safety to my father. I said, if I do not bring him back to you, I will bear the blame before you, my father, all my life. Now then, please let your servant remain here as my lord's slave in place of the boy, and let the boy return with his brothers. How can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? No, do not let me see the misery that would come upon my father.
Okay. Powerful statement. You're Joseph. This guy is begging for your only blood brother's life. And says, I promised my father my life for his. Take me. Don't keep the boy. My father will die if he's not in the caravan when he comes back. Judah is really stepping up to the plate. And what does it tell us about Judah's character? The guy who, well, let's just kill him. No, better yet, let's sell him. 13 years have changed him. He's lost 2 sons himself. He knows the grief of a father. The others are not stepping up. Judah's the one who gave himself as surety to Jacob.
You know, it's interesting. A lot of times they say, well, because Judah stepped up and was willing to give his own life to save Benjamin, you know, that's a reflection of Jesus, who comes from the tribe of Judah later on. But what's interesting is that you have to remember that those twins born to Judah were born before this ever happened. So it reflects back on God. I look at God's plan sometimes as like he spun a top. God knew that everything was going to happen, how it was going to happen, when it's going to happen, and he just spun the world into motion. And so he didn't need to Judah to make this verbal sacrifice or be willing to make this sacrifice for him to have twins that would descend to Jesus. He already knew it was going to happen. And you're right, because he knows what it is to lose multiple children at this point. Yeah. He now has a more closeness to his father, Israel, of, wow, now I know what it feels like to think that your child's dead.
Yeah. That's the whole point of the chapter about Judah. I mean, it's kind of an odd insert, but this gives you insight into who Judah has become. You know, he's not a 20-year-old or 25-year-old selling his brother. He's now a man looking back at his own family and going, I can empathize with Dad.
I was also thinking it just shows how heavy sin weighs on your heart, because it hasn't been forgiven yet. No one has taken our place. So it's so heavy. And it changed him so much through that journey, through that time.
Think about Joseph. This may be the first time he finds out how they explained his death. He was torn to pieces by a wild animal. Joseph doesn't know what they told Dad yet. Now he does. I mean, he's getting a whole lot of information here in a very short time.
One probably makes him feel better, because we talked a little bit last week how if Joseph was ever in prison and he wondered, why didn't my dad come and get me? Is my father looking for me? Does he know where I am? And he's always wondered, probably for years, my dad never came. Well, now he has it spelled out for him that, just based on that one sentence, I know that they told my dad that I was killed.
Yeah.
So now there's a little piece of relief, thinking my dad didn't just, whatever, I've got 11 more.
Also, my thing says that Judah's willingness to be a substitute for Benjamin helped make amends for his role in selling Joseph.
Oh, yeah.
So the whole thing of your forgiveness, he's trying to earn his way back.
Restitution. He's showing remorse for the act and says, I'll take it as a slave. I'll become a slave. Exactly what we sold. He doesn't know he's talking to him. Exactly what we sold you into. And we had a long discussion of slavery, so I'll skip over that.
So I think that it's been longer than 13 years. So I think it was 13
Oh,
years.
you're
and
right.
then we had 7 years of
13
planning.
plus 7
And
plus
now we've had a year or two,
Yeah, 2 or 3 here. Yeah,
of famine.
correct. Good.
So almost
Good
20.
catch. Yeah. So a lot happens in 20 years.
Right. But at the same time, Judah is still feeling the consequences and the way it is sent.
Almost hard. Yep.
Yeah. Think of Reuben's. We talked about it last week. Reuben goes, it's because of what we did to our brother that God's doing this to us. I mean, all these boys are going, we brought this on ourselves. Really bad karma. You know, they don't see God in this at all, but Joseph does. And that allows him to rise above his brothers and forgive them.
Joseph is a dreamer.
Yes. Yeah. They wouldn't say it that way. You know, you say it positively. Other thoughts? Okay. Let us go forward to, as they would say on HGTV, the reveal. Chapter 45, 1 through 3, please.
1 through 3?
Yeah, it's a real toughie.
Oh, jeez. Okay. Should I wait or are we good?
Yeah,
Good?
go ahead.
No,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. She's read this before, trust me. You know.
All right, Joseph could stand it no longer. There were many people in the room, and he said to his attendants, out, all of you. So he was alone with his brother when he told them who he was. Then he broke down and wept. He wept so loudly the Egyptians could hear him, and the word of it quickly carried to Pharaoh's palace. I am Joseph, he said to his brothers. Is my father still alive? But his brothers were speechless. They were stunned to realize that Joseph was standing there in front of them.
Yep. Now, this is the first time Joseph has spoken to them in their native language.
Mm-hmm.
There is no translator. Everybody out. All the Egyptians bolt. All of his servants bolt. There is no translator. And he says, I am Joseph. In their native language. Think about the shock of the brothers.
Mhm.
Everything that they said at the dinner between themselves, he knew it. Everything they said in the first visit when he was in their presence, he knew it. He's saying, I am your brother Joseph. And they've already bowed down to him several times on their bellies, just like his dream said. And they are speechless. Well, yeah, they are terrified in his presence. This guy can have them all whacked. If he wants to have revenge, he said, I'm your brother Joseph. You're toast. No, that's not what he does. He has forgiven them, and he weeps with joy so loudly that his servants and the other Egyptians nearby hear it, and the word goes to Pharaoh's house. Joseph's brothers have come. Who could have told him that? Probably the translator who heard Joseph tell, I'm Joseph, your brother. All of a sudden, the translator has a chance to maybe move up in status. If I take the tale quickly to Pharaoh's house, Pharaoh will be happy and I might be rewarded. Maybe I get a silver chain. A little bit of brass, whatever. But, any token from Pharaoh is a good token. So he reveals himself. Very dramatic scene, but he can't contain himself any longer. He's learned the information he needs. They have cared for his brother Benjamin. They weren't trying to kill him. He had that suspicion, I'm sure. He knows that they're willing to, life for life. Judah's going to trade his freedom for freedom of Benjamin. No questions asked, take me. Instead of leaving Simeon in the jug and then go back to Papa, they all came back when Benjamin had the cup. He's learned that they care for his younger brother. And now he can reveal who he is to them.
I think even what would have moved him more is that they cared about Dad.
Yeah.
That if he's not, if Benjamin doesn't go back,
Yeah.
then Dad's gonna die.
Yeah.
And and their attitude when they were younger seemed a little like, that's just
Yeah, who
Dad.
cares?
You mean like last Tuesday?
Well,
No,
it's been a
absolutely.
while.
Yeah, it's been a while. They have matured. It doesn't make the family any more non-dysfunctional, but they are at least caring for each other on a human basis
When the chips are down.
when the chips are down. And that's where it counts. I mean, you can give your brother and sister a lot of grief until the chips are down.
They've all become parents themselves, and so
Especially Benjamin.
especially Benjamin.
Why do you think he asked again if my father is still living when they just had that whole thing about if you don't let us take Benjamin back, our father will die? And then
Yeah.
he asked again.
Is Dad really
Oh,
alive?
okay.
Is he, he's an old guy now. Is he still alive? Really? I mean, it's more of a, is my father still alive? Not, is he still alive? Interrogatory.
Well, I wondered if you
Yeah.
thought of him.
I mean, and he knows, but, he's still alive. But that's probably amazing to him. Because as Pat pointed out, Joseph's probably 40 years old here or thereabouts. That's older than the average in this society by a long sight. It's kind of like military old. You hit 35, you're ancient. Okay, next up is 4 through 15. You got the good news part.
Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Please come closer to me." And they came closer. And he said, "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. Now do not be grieved or angry with yourselves, because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are still 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant in the earth, and to keep you alive by a great deliverance. Now, therefore, it was not you who sent me here, but God, and he has made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his household, and ruler over all the land of Egypt. Hurry and go up to my father, and say to him, 'Thus says your son Joseph, God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not delay. You shall live in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near me, you and your children and your children's children, and your flocks and your herds and all that you have. There I will also provide for you, for there are still 5 years of famine to come, and you and your household and all that you have would be impoverished. Behold, your eyes see, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see, that it is my mouth which is speaking to you. Now you must tell my father of all my splendor in Egypt, and all that you have seen, and you must hurry and bring my father down here.' Then he fell on his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept on his neck. He kissed all his brothers and wept on them, and afterward his brothers talked with him."
Okay. You have a good family reunion going on here. And
Except for all the crying.
yeah, well,
That's family reunion. So
yeah.
Some have yelling, some
Yeah.
have crying, some have both.
Lots of alcohol.
Yeah.
But they're not getting killed.
Yeah. Nobody's getting whacked here. It's not one of my family reunions. But somebody liked that one. Okay. But he's saying, go quickly to Dad. Bring him here. I'll put you guys up here in the land of Goshen, where the Nile it's not all marshland, but it can be. But this area where your flocks can live, I'll give you all the food. That's why God sent me ahead of you, so I can preserve life, preserve the clan. And you guys will be fine up here. You'll be near where I am. And Avaris is here. On is here. So wherever his household is going to be, He's near to Goshen. Might have been here at Param because this is about where the border was. They had canals running from the Nile, filling up these lakes, because you can't walk sheep across lakes. Sheep do not walk on water. And if you're coming into Egypt, water was a natural barrier. If you live in the Sinai, swimming is not one of the first things you learn as a kid. Maybe chasing mountain goats, but not swimming the backstroke. So water was an impenetrable barrier to most of the Bedouins. We don't think about those things, but you know, our culture, you teach people to swim even if you live in New Mexico. The Egyptians, by and large, couldn't swim, and they lived along the Nile. Why? There are crocodiles in the Nile. You know, oh, let's send little Johnny out to. Oh, sorry about that, Johnny. Okay, swimming is not a strong suit in this group. Oh yeah, yeah. Hippos are deadly. Disney got that part right in the Jungle Cruise.
I like where they use the term remnant because it kind of made me think about like Noah. Like, get your people together, you got his family together, get your herds together, you got the animals together, and I have a place set aside for you. You are but a remnant to the rest of the world, but I have set aside a special spot for you to keep you protected during the times ahead.
And he's viewing it as a short term. We got 5 years left of the famine, and then you guys can go back home. This is a temporary resident. This is a sojourn. Much like Abraham came into the promised land, he sojourned there. Isaac sojourned there. Jacob sojourned there. And now we're going to have a short sojourn in Egypt, and then we'll go back. It lasts a little longer than Joseph planned. You know. But this is very actively planning, let's get everybody in here. Go back up, get the families, come on down. I'll make a place for you, bring your flocks, your herds, everything you've got. They're abandoning the land of promise. They're not going to be at Hebron or Beersheba. They're going to be in Egypt. Throughout most of the Bible, Egypt represents the world and sin. And that's right. But he's bringing them there. There's also a prophecy that I will call my son out of Egypt. It's one of the prophecies of the Messiah. It has to be a Jewish man coming from Egypt. Jesus was taken there. He was about 2 years old. And then he comes out and goes up north with his father and mother to live in Nazareth. He's called a Nazarite, but he did come out of Egypt. So when you read these short prophecies, I was going to say minor prophets, there's nothing minor about them. You get these little snippets. You go, okay, what does that mean? Well, you can always go to the Mishnah and they'll tell you, but commentaries will make some good guesses. Look to the life of Jesus and see where it cuts in. Over 600 prophecies can be fit exactly into what he did in his life.
I mean, could you make the argument that every time you see certain numbers, I know we've talked about that at length, when you see certain numbers, that we as Christians see that as a little bit of a God's thumbprint on something. So it's almost like, so we have a Shemite group, and for 120 years, there's number 12, for 120 years, they kick out and control northern Egypt. But it allows people with Shemite ancestry to accept Joseph, put him in a position where the guys in the South never would have done that.
No.
Now Joseph is in a leadership position to where now he can rescue the 12 sons of Israel and give them a place to stay during 7 years of trouble and famine, in which they end up staying 400 years. There's number 40. And so every time you turn around, you see these things happening, it's a little bit of God's thumbprint.
I look at more on the event itself. Does this event match up to that?
Right.
Yeah, but the numbers are significant. And that's a whole different rabbit hole. Someday, over a cup of coffee, you and I can go through that at length.
Or a pot. You know.
Yeah, no. I still don't do cannabis. Sorry. Oh, okay.
Yeah, you do, Harry.
Yeah.
First thing his mind went to.
Yeah. You say pot. I know.
Did you adjust it too much? I have a question to save you from all that. How old is Benjamin? Does Benjamin remember Joseph?
Okay.
Other than as the story of the brother that died.
Okay. The matrix of common wisdom. I do like Monty Python as well, but what can I say? Drop first, second visit. Benjamin is 32 when they meet Pharaoh. So when his brother got sold into slavery, he was 7. A 7-year-old remembering his brother at age 32.
Okay.
You know? I mean, it's old enough to go, I remember him. It's kind of like you remember the grandparent or uncle that read with you when you were that age, but not a whole lot else, you know. You have snippets of memory going back that far. Those guys have vivid memories, but, you know, they're a little younger than we are. But yeah, he would have known his brother, but when Joseph first sees him, is this your younger brother?
Right.
He asks the question, you know, he might be, he could be second cousin twice removed. I don't know. You know, so he asks the question, is this, you know, did they go and find somebody who sort of looked like Joseph or sort of looked like Rachel and, you know, we'll make that work. Little boys are doing things in the sunroom. Okay, other questions on Joseph's reaction. Joseph reveals who he is, and they sit around and talk. Maybe with a pot of coffee. Probably with a pot of beer. And just reminisce and catch up. But he has forgiven them. He says, you meant it for evil, God meant it for good. And because they have been good to his brother, he forgives them. What might this guy have done if they had thrown Benjamin to the wolves? They might not have made it back to Dad. I mean, he has the power to do that. I mean, the word autocrat has a real serious meaning, and he could exercise autocratic power. We, in our society, we don't think of that. We tend to put Joseph on a pedestal, but Joseph is testing these guys to see what's true.
It's almost like that term when people say, choose your next words wisely. You say one thing wrong, you're all gone.
It doesn't work well in Sparta.
I noticed that Benjamin didn't have a coat.
Oh. Yeah, he's dressed like everybody
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I sent out the Benihana mural, so that you can see the wealthy would have had those kind of coats, but you've also got guys in very plain attire in that. Okay, are we ready to just begin the migration, 16 through 20? I think you're up.
Okay. Now the report of it was heard in Pharaoh's house, saying, Joseph's brothers have come. So it pleased Pharaoh and his servants well. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, say to your brothers, do this, load your animals and depart. Go to the land of Canaan, bring your father and your households and come to me. I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you will eat the fat of the land. Now you are commanded to do this. Take carts out of the land of Egypt for your little ones and your wives. Bring your father and come. Also do not be concerned about your goods, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours. Then the sons of Israel did so, and Joseph gave them carts according to the command of Pharaoh, and he gave them provisions for the journey. He gave to all of them, to each man, changes of garments, but to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of garments. And he sent to his father these things: 10 donkeys loaded with goods, good things of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys loaded with grain, bread, and food for his father for the journey. So he sent his brothers away, and they departed. And he said to them, see that you do not become troubled along the way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Every-
Don't quarrel on the journey.
Yeah. Everybody walks except for the rich and powerful. Pharaoh said, take carts. Go and get everything that they've got. And don't worry about, the small things. You'll have the best of Egypt. Pharaoh is rewarding Joseph by welcoming his family. Joseph's success in this famine period has been so great that Pharaoh is rewarding his whole family. Bring them on down. If they're like you, this will be great. And bring them in carts. So the little kids aren't going to be carried by their mother. They're going to be riding in a cart.
A limo.
Yeah, this is sending, you're not sending U-Haul. You're sending the best that the Egyptians have. They'd be going along what is usually in the scripture called the way of the Philistines or the way of the sea to get over here, to get up to Hebron, to get to Jacob. But imagine his sons coming in with this wagon train behind them, probably with drivers, because they don't know how to drive carts. But no, seriously.
Yeah.
Where does somebody who's pushing herds of sheep learn to drive a cart? Only the rich people in Egypt have carts to move goods back and forth. Merchants move heavy stuff on the water there. So carts are a status symbol. They're not chariots, they're not war chariots, but they're going to come in style, probably being dragged in carts pulled by oxen, not by horses. They haven't invented the horse yoke yet. I mean, if you Google an Egyptian war chariot, you'll see a very light. They don't really have the yokes that we would have for when you think of Conestoga wagons being pulled by horses. Though many Conestogas in the United States, going from St. Joe, Missouri to Oregon, were pulled by oxen, not by horses. I know John Wayne got it wrong, which really is shocking.
I think you're right, because I played Oregon Trail, and I'm pretty sure.
I'm thinking of Oregon Trail. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure it was pretty
Yeah.
slow.
Yeah, another documentary, yes. So Pharaoh's sending the best that he's got. And Joseph sends, Benjamin makes out like a fat rat, but they have provisions for the journey. They're taking food back that they bought, but there's also provisions for the journey. He gives Benjamin 300 shekels of silver, 5 sets of clothing. The other guys get new clothes. And as I've said many times before, you usually slept in the same clothes you went sheep herding in the next day. Washing was sort of a hit and miss sort of thing. But they're sending 10 donkey loads of the best things of Egypt. 10 donkey loads of more food. They're coming back here to where the food is. But let's send plenty of food away so that Jacob can probably give it to any allies he has to make sure that his wells are not stopped up in his absence. They think they're coming back in 5 years. So you would use these gifts to be gifts to the other nomads so that they don't encroach on your well. They'll drink the water of them, but they're not going to stop them up so you can't come back.
Probably save their life too, because
Yeah.
they don't have a family.
So this is a good thing for all concerned. And they're carrying already cooked bread and other provisions. So they're going to be going in style. This is not the nomads, hat in hand. They're going to roll into Egypt like kings. That's Pharaoh's intent. He's honoring Joseph. It all looks good. Okay. So they went up from Egypt, came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan. They told him, Joseph is still alive. In fact, he's the ruler of all Egypt. I mean, that sounds like something on a game show. You know, Jacob was stunned. He did not believe them. But when they told him everything Joseph had said to them, and when he saw the carts, you know, these guys aren't smart enough and rich enough to pull that off. Joseph had sent to carry him back. The spirit of their father Jacob revived. And Israel said, I am convinced my son Joseph is still alive. I will go and see him before I die. Now, this guy's not a spring chicken. You know? But his spirit revived. My son's alive. The shock could have killed him.
He's 130.
Yeah. But it's the carts that convince him that he's really alive, and he's, you know,
The Egyptian drivers.
Yeah. The Egyptians are suddenly, or at least servants of Egyptians, are suddenly working for him. Real turnaround. Don't worry, it'll flip back. That's what we're doing in Exodus. You know?
Well, also, he was old enough that if there wasn't a cart, he couldn't go.
That's right. He's got a bad hip. Had that for a long time.
That's true.
You know, arthritis is setting in by now.
Yeah, I love back on 45, 1 through 8. I love that Joseph reflects back on the dark days and what happened to him with his brothers, but he gives an opportunity to say everything that happened had to happen because it was God's will.
Yeah.
So even for us, it was a good day. It was a bad day. It was a rough week. This
Yep.
month's been tough. This is happening. That's happening. We should just give glory to God, and no matter what's happening.
Because God had put him in the position to preserve that line.
Right.
Patsy asked, would Jacob figure it out that his sons had lied about Joseph's animal mauling death? Oh yeah, Patsy, he broke the code. And the guys who are coming to tell him your son is still alive are the same ones that told him the lie in the first place and have been repeating it ever since.
Can you imagine that?
It's a 20-year.
Conversation?
It's a 20-year ass kicking. Coming.
There's gonna be some knuckle sandwiches, maybe.
Yeah.
Lucky for them, Dad's pretty old.
Yeah.
He's got a
But
bad
he did
day.
wrestle with
He's
God.
got a hell of a
Now's the
stick,
time
though.
to tell.
But this is a joyous occasion. His son, who was dead, is alive.
Like the prodigal son.
Uh-huh. So when you look at what Jesus used for parables, reflect back, this is what would have triggered in a Jewish mind. The son who was dead and is alive again. The joy of Jacob when the prodigal returns.
He's revived.
Yeah.
And he-
Jesus.
Yes,
Dead.
exactly.
And as I say too, and he
Yeah.
went and prepared a place for them.
Yep.
And then even Pharaoh said, "Don't worry about the little things. Don't worry about your trinkets. Don't worry
Yep.
about your little house. I got something far greater than you could ever imagine for you."
And here we have food and clothing.
And
Yeah.
for clothing.
You can change your clothes.
Yeah.
Twice a
New-
year.
Well, new raiment. You know. So, yeah.
You have to smell
And
like
crocodile
Like sheep
teeth.
anymore.
Okay, anything else out there? And yes, Patsy, definitely they're busted. You know? Yeah, the secret is out. Even Jacob knows it. But the joy is his son is alive. And I will see him before I die. I'm going to get on that cart right there, and we're going to Egypt.
How long would it take him?
Oh, coming down from Hebron, you could probably easily make it in 2 weeks. I mean, oxen don't go fast. Yeah, and there are no roads. There are smooth portions that have been used as trails back and forth for millennia. But it took the Romans to build a real road from Egypt to Israel to move their troops. And that's not going to come along for several thousand years.
And so when they were going with the food and the donkeys, they probably could do it in a week.
Yeah.
Rather than 2.
Because they don't have to stay on the road. They can take, they could go wherever the sheep were at that point. I mean, if he had moved his property down here, they could have gone through the Mamata Pass in central Sinai, or they could go along the way of the sea, or across the desert of Shur and up to Kadesh Barnea and in. Probably they stayed on the sea because the Egyptians have military posts about every 30 miles that they collect with cisterns and water collection water so that you can keep caravans moving back and forth. Again, they're controlling their border by saying, there's water here you can die of thirst. Make your best call.
Now, do they charge for that water?
Oh yeah. They're Egyptians. Some things don't change. Okay, we're 10 of, it is, let's see, chapter 46. Let's do the first 7 verses, just for the fun of it. Scott, 46, chapters of verse 1 through 7.
Israel set out with all that he had and came to Beersheba, and he offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. That night God spoke to Israel in a vision. Jacob, Jacob, he said. And Jacob replied, Here I am. God said, I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make you into a great nation there. I will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also bring you back. Joseph will close your eyes when you die. Jacob left Beersheba. The sons of Israel took their father Jacob in the wagons Pharaoh had sent to carry him, along with their dependents and their wives. They also took their cattle and possessions, and they acquired in the land of Canaan. Then Jacob and all of his offspring with him came to Egypt. His sons and grandsons, his daughters and granddaughters, indeed all his offspring, he brought with him to Egypt.
Okay. The comforting words of God. This is the last time God's going to speak to Jacob that we know of. He's wrestled with God. He's seen a stairway to heaven, a ladder to heaven. He's only spoken with Jacob a few times. And now he's down at Beersheba, down here on the edge of the Negev, and he offers sacrifice, still in the land of Canaan. And God speaks to him and says, don't be afraid to go to Egypt. If Jacob's remembering Abraham going to Egypt, and, the don't go to Egypt ever, don't go, don't take wives of the Canaanites, he said, go to Egypt. This is a new command.
Is this the only time that people have been told to go to Egypt?
Yes, by God.
By God.
What about Joseph
Yeah, it's
taking Jesus?
Okay. He is told in a dream to leave, and he goes to Egypt.
Okay.
Yeah. But Joseph, father of Jesus, made the decision to go to Egypt, where there was a thriving Jewish community in Alexandria and upriver at the Elephantine. So there was a Jewish community to go to there.
Well, we also have the prophecy about in Egypt.
Oh, yeah. So you got to go there to fulfill the prophecy.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
God didn't tell him, but God gave him thought.
God directed his steps.
Yes. Yeah. And Herod kind of sealed the deal.
Force the issue.
Yeah. I mean, Herod's going to kill the kids. Get out now. Yeah. And the closest place to go is Egypt. You don't go south. And he's taking all of his household with him. The rest of the chapter is his household. Let me give you an unexpected number. There are only 70 people total, including Joseph and his 2 sons. I will make you a great nation, is the promise to Jacob. It's the same promise that was given to Abraham and to Isaac and to Jacob. This is the last time it's reiterated to Jacob. He says, I'll make you a great nation. You're going down to Egypt. And Joseph, your son, will close your eyes when you die. But you will come back. And the coming back is an interesting story in itself, because Joseph will take the body of Jacob back to Hebron. But he's going to go along the King's Highway to get there. We'll talk about that when we get to those chapters. But just when you read, you go, oh, where's that? It's on the other side of Jordan. That's why you don't recognize some of the names. Okay, we are at 7:51, so we're going to close down here. Next week, we'll pick it up at verse 8 of chapter 46. Are there any questions before I shut down out there? Or around the table? These are easier to hear.
I'm hopefully Simeon gave him a mouthful the first time they came back. Hey guys, 2 to 3 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, thought you'd be here a lot sooner. What happened?
Yeah. Good question.
Yeah. Because he's like, oh yeah, he brought their brother Simeon to them, and then it just continues there.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Something
I think Simeon's got to have something to say. I mean,
the story doesn't say it, but Benjamin went home to get his father. Joseph stays in Egypt.
Yeah.
Why would you need Benjamin to go? Because Dad would die of my God, he's dead too. He's got to go back with his brothers. And Joseph has to trust them, and he's built that trust finally, that they're not going to kill his brother and bring Jacob back. So
Jacob has to trust them.
Joseph has to trust them to bring him back. But sending Egyptian drivers with the carts might have certainly it encouraged Jacob that this is real. My son's got a great job in Egypt, and he's saying, come on down.
You picturing the Beverly Hillbillies.
Yeah, and Goshen.
Wales is there.
Yeah, and Goshen actually is Green Acres, right? Okay,
you go.
on that spiritual note, I'm going to be shutting down, folks. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Bye.